The foods in places like India, China, Korea, Thailand, and other places across Asia are almost synonymous with the word spicy to most people. The heat of these culinary traditions owe much to the over 4,000 varieties of chilies grown across the continent. Some of the most famous foods from the continent, like vindaloo, hot pot, kimchi, tom kha, and green papaya salad, require it as an essential ingredient and spice. Although it is true that chilies never fully conquered Asia, its ubiquity within its culinary tradition is incredibly pronounced. In fact, most chili peppers produced in the world come from Asia. Despite its popularity, you would be wrong to think that chili peppers originated in any country in Asia. Not India, Thailand, or Korea were the places where the first spicy berries were cultivated. Oh yeah, chilies don't solely bear a striking similarity in appearance to those little fruits. They are in fact technically berries as well. Today we will be exploring the delicious history of the chili. But before we begin, I'd like to welcome you to or back to my channel. I appreciate all my viewers and am grateful for your time today. Now back to the video. The global adoption of the chili has a rather interesting and complex history. Chilies were first cultivated in the modern-day country of Bolivia, likely sometime around 7500 BCE, and probably had multiple first cultivation zones among the indigenous peoples of modern-day Mexico, Peru, Central America, and the United States. It wasn't until about the 16th century that the chili pepper spread throughout the world. Christopher Columbus and his crew were potentially the first group of people outside of the Western Hemisphere to sample the spice, likely cayenne pepper, and, like other things, he would misidentify the fruit, naming it pepper due to its resemblance in spiciness to black pepper, which is a wholly unrelated plant. It wouldn't be long afterwards that the Spanish and later the Portuguese began growing chili peppers within their new colonies on the Azores and Canary Islands off the coast of Europe and Africa. However, it was ultimately the Portuguese who would export the chili pepper across the world. Portuguese traders first introduced chili peppers to Asia through India, and eventually it reached Southeast Asia sometime near the end of the 16th century. Because of it being a spice, Portuguese merchants promoted the commerce in Asia within their ambitions to monopolize the spice trade. For Southeast Asia, there are little records indicating when chilies arrived. Its first mention comes from the 18th century poet Sunthorn Poo, who mentioned chili and salt as the best ingredients to spice venison. However, its introduction was likely around the 16th century when Portuguese traders began searching for the spice islands in modern-day Indonesia. Its introduction into ports in Southeast Asia late in the 16th century eventually allowed chilies to travel to East Asia. Chinese ships frequented ports in Malacca, Ayutthaya, and Cambodia and seem to have brought the chili back to Funan shortly after. According to Dr. Brian R. Dott in the book The Chili Pepper in China, the first record of the chili pepper in China dates to 1591 in Huangzhou, which was likely brought to the country aboard a Chinese junk either trading with the Spanish in the Philippines or the Portuguese or Dutch in Indonesia. And for the rest of East Asia, the chili pepper arrived to Japan a bit later and eventually to the Korean peninsula. Portuguese traders brought the chili to Japan near the end of the 16th century, and either the Portuguese or Japanese brought it to Korea. The oldest mention of the chili pepper in Korea dates to an encyclopedia published in 1614 called The Collected Essays of Jin Bong by Yi Su-guang, and Farm Management written by Hong Man-sun in 1700, which details the chili pepper's cultivation. So, was that it? Did chili peppers become an overnight success in Asia? Well, not really. Chili peppers actually received a rather lukewarm and mixed reception amongst global consumers early on within this time period. Today, China is one of the largest producers and consumers of chili peppers within the world. However, initially the Chinese were a bit reluctant to introduce the spicy chili pepper into their diets. The 16th century Chinese encyclopedist Gao Lian provides China's oldest account of the chili pepper within his work, 8 Treatises on the Nurturing of Life, a philosophical manuscript about cultivating a Taoist approach to life, somewhat of a self-help book. He describes the chili as spicy, but emphasizes its use as a decorative plant. Many Chinese people at the time believed that eating too flavorful of food was not healthy, so for centuries, many Chinese people, especially elites, dismissed chili peppers, believing the spice was harmful. Despite playing a tremendous role within the global diffusion of the chili pepper, it is interesting to point out that the Portuguese themselves did not widely adopt the spicy fruit into their cuisine, neither then nor now. In fact, very few in Europe or Asia came to appreciate the heat of the hot pepper during the early modern period. For people across the world, it actually took several generations before chili peppers became a staple spice outside the Western Hemisphere. In China, records from 1621 show that the chili pepper was first used for medicine. Within traditional Chinese medicine, hot peppers were thought to have a drying characteristic and force the body to expel moisture, a healing technique more important within humid climates. According to Dr. Dot, we find that chilies were first introduced to China on the coast, but they didn't really take off there. The locations with the earliest adoption in the cuisine and most widely consumed were the interior provinces of Hunan and Sichuan, both of which had very humid climates and became the focal points for the consumption of chili peppers. It wouldn't potentially be until the mid-19th century that the chili pepper would spread from these provinces and become a standard spice within the Chinese household. Its spread is mostly due to the fact that spices were quite expensive, but chili peppers were a robust plant able to grow in a variety of soil conditions and climates. For many people in China and Asia, it became a popular way to spice foods much cheaper than afforded by other spices. So the consumption of chilies first spread among poor peasants and only later to broad sectors of society. As for Europe, they had a very different relationship with the chili pepper. You might already be familiar with the rather common spice paprika, which derives from chili peppers. However, until quite recently, paprika was a rather hot and spicy seasoning. Like other chilies, it originated in the Western Hemisphere, where it grew wild in central Mexico and had been collected by local people for centuries. It was brought to Spain sometime in the 16th century, shortly after Hieronymus monks from the Use Monastery in southwestern Spain began cultivating the pepper to cure meats and eventually season cooked food. Somehow the particular pepper made its way to the Ottoman Empire, likely via Spanish or Portuguese traders. Turkish and Hungarian farmers began to plant the pepper in Budapest sometime around 1569. However, it wasn't until centuries later when paprika became the seasoning we know today. By the late 19th century, Hungarians were one of the few Europeans who were fond of the chili pepper and adapted it widely within their cuisine, their most famous pepper being the wax pepper. They also began cultivating a much milder variety of chili. A Hungarian breeder successfully grafted a sweet fruit plant to paprika and produced a less spicy version of the chili pepper towards the end of the 19th century, hence why the word paprika being one of Hungarian origin. The term actually is rooted within the word for pepper. Europeans tended toward growing peppers with less intense heat. There is, of course, another variety of pepper which caught on in Europe. The sweet pepper, or the bell pepper, is the version of the chilies that naturally don't produce capsaicin, or the chemical responsible for the spicy effect of hot foods. So this brings up an important question. Why did certain cultures adopt chili peppers and not others? One of the biggest assumptions about why certain cultures adopted spicy food is because of climate. People tend to assume that people from hotter climates probably prefer hotter peppers just because they're used to hot climates. And it is true that places like Thailand, India, and Mexico, and even China have some of the warmest climates in the world and are very famous for having the spiciest foods. The idea assumes that spicy foods help people sweat and in turn cools them off in warm climates. However, the theory doesn't seem to hold ground upon closer scrutiny. For instance, Cambodia and Vietnam are located next to Thailand. Although some of their dishes can be pretty hot, by and large their foods are significantly less spicy than their Thai neighbors. People in Cambodia tend to prefer balanced flavor profiles, combining sweet, bitter, sour, and salty, whereas Vietnamese food tends toward mild flavors. Well, of course you can find non-spicy foods in Thailand, but Cambodia and Vietnam aren't famous for their hot peppers like their close neighbors Thailand. I also want to point out that even people from regions not known for spicy food do enjoy the hot pepper as well. If you look at the chart for some of the hottest peppers, they don't always originate in areas of the world known for their spiciness. Take example, the United States and England. Even India has regional variations for levels of hotness, and some cuisines don't use hot peppers at all. Andhra Pradesh and Telangana are well known for having the spiciest foods in the subcontinent, whereas the food of Punjab tends to be a lot milder. Some studies have shown that issues of food spoilage might have played a larger role within the global diffusion of spicy food. Higher annual temperatures meant that food spoiled quicker and spices were a more effective tool to cure meats and preserve vegetables. Many spices, such as the hot pepper, have been shown to have natural mechanisms to prevent or slow the growth of microbes. But even still, the phenomenon isn't uniform across geography. A 2021 study by several food science experts shows little correlation between climate and spicy food. There is variability on hot pepper usage throughout geographic regions and even within cultures and nations located in the same area. So perhaps it might have something to do with competition among spices. There are numerous spices around the world, and some are more accessible than others depending on the part of the globe people live. Some cultures might have adopted chilies because they were easier to grow and tended to be more readily available than other spices. China is the largest producer of chili with roughly 16.1 million tons, followed by Mexico with 2.7 million tons, whereas India ranks number 5 with 1.5 million chilies produced annually. These countries might consume so much chili for the simple fact there's so much of it, but really it could be a numerous amount of factors that affect how people adopt chilies in the first place. But that's just a few theories. Chili peppers have certainly come a long way since they were first cultivated by native people in the Americas, and their popularity only continues to rise throughout the world. Personally, I do like spicy food, but my tolerance for hot mostly ends around the Thai chili pepper, which is around 100,000 to 225,000 Scoville, so it's pretty low on the scale of chili pepper hotness. But I don't know, maybe let me know your favorite chili down in the comments section. Or let me know if you have any theories on why some people prefer spicy foods and others don't. But that's all I have for you today. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider hitting that subscribe button and giving the video a thumbs up. I make videos on various historical topics and would greatly appreciate your support. Thanks, and I hope to see you again next time.